In this video, Dr. Jordan Peterson explains why your belief system can change your experience and behavior.
One of the things that you're going to do if you look at things phenomenologically is to assume that everything that you experience is real. So then we would say that there's no attempt in the phenomenological world to reduce pain to something material. Pain stands itself as a phenomenon. So does anxiety, so does joy. All the things that the scientists of consciousness call qualia, which are viewed by them as qualities of the objective world, aren't viewed that way by the phenomenologists. They just say those are primary elements of being. So it's a very interesting way of looking at things because it kind of allows you to reclaim the validity of your own experience. You can no longer say, well, that's only subjective. Now, that doesn't mean that everything you claim subjectively is true, objectively, or for other people. What it does mean is that everything that you experience subjectively is real. Now, that doesn't mean you have to not think about it or take it apart or categorize it properly. You still have to do all of those things. But you're put into a place where there's no need to deny the reality of your own experience or to subordinate it to something else. So, for example, if I'm doing dream analysis with someone, which I do often if people dream, because dreams, as Jung pointed out, are they're manifestations of being. You don't come up with them. They appear to you. They sort of appear out of nowhere in some sense. They manifest themselves. They do it strangely, and I think the reason for that is that they contain unarticulated thought. But if you can get a handle on them and assess them, then sometimes they can tell you things that there's no other way you'd figure out. And what's really cool about them is that they have the same impersonality as phenomena in the broader world of experience have. You know, you don't ever think about the truth of a chair. It's just there. And dreams are like that. They're just there. And if you can untangle what they have to, what they indicate, then you can get a take on your own experience that's not altered by any of your local subjective wishes and desires. I hate to use the word subjective in this sort of context. So, phenomenology is the study of being. Now, and in being there are a variety of aspects. Heidegger broke the world of experience, being, into three basic categories. There was the Umwelt, which I think is basically the world beyond culture and the individual. There's the Mitwelt, and that's the world that we share with everyone else, so that's roughly the social world and the social structures. And then there's the Eigenwelt, which is that domain of experience that's unique to you, that other people can't partake in. So those are the elements of being as far as the phenomenologists were concerned. And in those domains of being, different experiences manifest themselves. We talked about some of the ones that would be manifestations of the Eigenwelt. Scientists would call those things emotional or motivational states. Normally people think of them as feelings. I would say, I feel thus, I feel such and such. And those are experiences that manifest themselves to you, or that you have, depending on how you look at it, that are indicative of the manner in which you should act in relationship to being. Now, part of the reason that this is relevant to psychotherapy in particular was because the phenomenologists were very interested in the manifestation of meaning. So you could say, well, nihilism is the absence of meaning, and totalitarianism is the fixedness of meaning, right? If you're a totalitarian, what you do is say, all meanings exist in relationship to this structure. It's almost as if the phenomenologists would say you're trying to reduce the Umwelt, which is the natural world, the Mitwelt, which is the social world, and the Eigenwelt, which is your own world. You're trying to reduce all of that to the Mitwelt, so that everything falls under an explanation that's granted to you by some higher authority. And then, of course, the nihilists having none of that. They use their Eigenwelt, I would say, their own world, to invalidate meaning in any domain. Now, the phenomenologists would say, well, it's a mistake to use your rationality to undermine the sense, the manifestation of meaning. And I can give you an example of that. So let's say you're a good nihilist and you think that maybe you're going to go do something difficult, like put yourself through university, and then you think, in a relatively depressed state of mind, maybe you encounter some obstacles of one form or another, and you think, oh, to hell with this. What difference does it make anyways? Who cares if I go and get my degree, you know? None of this knowledge is particularly relevant or meaningful, and who the hell's going to know the difference in a million years? And so you think, well, that's a perfectly rational dismissal, because who is going to know in a million years? Or let's say, well, even if you could make a case that someone might know, there might be some effects left of you in a million years, then we'll just multiply it by 100,000 and go to 1 trillion years. So here you are, you're this little tiny speck on a slightly bigger speck in the middle of a galaxy that has God only knows how many billion stars, and then there's 1 billion of those galaxies, although there's way more than that, and they're spread across this tremendous expanse of time. And in the face of all that, who cares what you do? Well, what a phenomenologist would say is, okay, let's look at how meaning manifests itself when you alter your own private world in a variety of manners. So let's say you're trying to do something. Maybe you're working as a volunteer in a hospital helping sick kids. You know, you're reading to them so that they're distracted from their pain. And you say, well, in 1 trillion years, who's going to know the difference? And so you think, well, it's meaningless to do this. And the phenomenologist would say, if the frame of reference that you're using, like if you're imposing, if you're transforming the way your being manifests itself so that it becomes meaningless and absurd, then you should try experiencing it in a different manner. So because a rationalist, in some sense, the phenomenologists say, a rationalist can't deal with the argument, what difference is it going to make in 1 trillion years, and here you are, a little dust speck among all these other dust specks. It's ultimately meaningless. A phenomenologist would say, maximize the meaning. That's the marker of truth. And it's a completely different way of thinking about it. So he would say, for example, that if you're going to a hospital and you're reading to sick children, that the frame of reference that you should use, the way that you allow that experience to manifest itself, should be such that the experience manifests itself so that it's as meaningful as possible rather than as meaningless. The idea being that just because you can twist your own experience so that certain elements of your being become meaningless does not mean that that's right. The fact that it becomes meaningless actually means that it's wrong. Because you see, it all depends on what you allow to be primary, and this is the phenomenologist's point. If you allow your strict rationality to be primary, then if it can attack something and destroy it, then that thing is worthy of being attacked and destroyed. But if you flip it around and you say, well, what you should be doing is interacting with your experience or allowing your experience to manifest itself in a manner that situates you most meaningfully in the here and now, whatever framework you're using to do that works is right. Well, it's a completely different way of looking at things. And it's a real escape from the pathology of rationalism. You know, because it isn't obvious that what you think should take priority.